Hello and welcome to the Minds on the Frontline Podcast, brought to you by the Frontline Strong Together 5 program. FST5 provides streamlined access to behavioral and mental health services, as well as crisis resources for Michigan's Frontline 5 workers and their families. This includes all professional, part-time, and volunteer firefighters, EMS, law enforcement, corrections officers, and 911 dispatchers in Michigan and their immediate family members. First responders and mental health experts collaboratively created FST5 to provide 24/7 live support, effective resources, and cutting-edge services to prevent and alleviate PTSD, anxiety, depression, and other frontline work-related mental and behavioral health challenges. Need help now? If you are a frontline worker in Michigan or an immediate family member experiencing any crisis, work-related, substance abuse, depression, relationships, finances, or any other, reach out by calling 1-833-34-STRONG or go to fst5.org for more information. I'm Jeff Lassers, one of the hosts of the Minds on the Frontline podcast, and I'm a professional firefighter, paramedic, educator, and content creator. Minds on the Frontline is co-hosted by Mike Mattern, who is also a professional firefighter and paramedic. In addition, Mike is a peer support team member for his fire department and the Frontline Strong Together 5 program, a board member of the Michigan Crisis Response Association, and the former chair of the Michigan Professional Firefighters Union Behavioral Health Committee. Mike has training and experience with frontline worker mental and behavioral health. On the other hand, I do not. My role is to produce the show, whereas Mike is our resident subject matter expert. Together, we hope to inform, educate, and entertain frontline workers, their families, and the public regarding the realities of frontline work-related mental and behavioral health challenges. In this episode, we dive into a fascinating topic that has been gaining a lot of attention in the mental and behavioral health space: mushrooms, specifically psilocybin. Psilocybin-assisted therapy is an emerging field with promising potential, especially for frontline workers dealing with mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, and PTSD. Clinical studies and legislative initiatives are currently examining the controlled administration of psilocybin within therapeutic settings, combined with professional counseling. This approach is carefully tailored, with participants undergoing thorough screening and receiving post-session therapy to integrate their experiences, all within a supportive and controlled environment. This form of therapy is gaining attention because it offers potential relief where conventional treatments might fall short. To help us explore this topic, we are joined by Tess Brzezinski, a mycologist and co-founder of Novel Integrated Medicine, and Hassam Issa, the Director of Clinical Operations at Novel. Novel is a Detroit-based company pioneering the use of psilocybin and other natural medicinal approaches to address the growing mental health crisis. They aim to equip therapists with the tools to integrate psilocybin into therapy, support trauma and PTSD treatment, and enhance public dialogue about alternative mental health treatments. During this episode, our guests will help us examine the reasons behind the increasing interest in fungi within the health and wellness industry, and discuss the application of psilocybin in treating mental and behavioral health disorders. Please check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Okay, I got it. Now that we got a good rapport.
Yeah, sorry.
Shut up,
I
phone.
didn't mean to start that whole thing. But.
No, I do it all the time, and I usually do it first, so people feel comfortable screwing up.
Cool.
So you're welcome to screw up.
Love it. Natural. Organic.
Good afternoon. How you guys doing?
Great.
Thanks for joining me all the way down here. Color coordinated. I like it. Everybody called ahead. We're all going to, do a Metallica cover band later. It's going to be amazing.
Love it.
Tess, tell everybody who you are, what you do, where you do it.
Of course. Hey, I'm Tess. I'm a WSU graduate. Go Warriors.
Right on.
So it's great to be here. I'm a mycologist. I have been studying fungi for over 10 years now. They've been a big part of my life. I started Fungi Freights, which is a community program, mycology hub in Poletown, East Detroit. And I'm here today representing Novel.
Right on. What's Novel do?
Novel is a upcoming start business where we specialize in psilocybin mushrooms, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. But we're here to rewrite a new chapter in mental health. So allowing people to kind of write their own
So
novel,
right. Right on.
in their own mental health journey. So kind of a patient-led way to healing.
So yeah, it's a very new space in a lot of ways in therapeutics, right? And psilocybin, when I was in high school, mushrooms would have never even been considered anything in the therapy realm. At most, you might have saw a, quote, church or religious group that would get a pass on using them. That would be the most you'd ever even hear about them in a legal sense. Now, we're entering into this therapeutic space, and you being interested in fungi, the whole kingdom of these mushrooms, and then psilocybin being one small piece of this huge kingdom, is an interesting thing. And like we were talking about before the show, it's your timing of your passion and the timing of this becoming something that is looked at seriously as a possible treatment or therapeutic couldn't be better for you. Timing's everything. 10 years ago, you're a criminal.
Absolutely.
Now you're a researcher.
Oh my gosh, I was the weird mushroom girl for a long time.
Well, you still are. You're just, but you're professional.
Yes, I will proudly take on that role. But it's just wonderful to see data-backed science and pushing mushrooms into the limelight for mental health and wellness, because it's fantastic and can heal a lot of people. To share that, to be a voice for the mushrooms.
All right, Hassam, how about you? Where are you from and what do you do?
So, born and raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Right on.
I'm a behavioral analyst. Basically what I do is I'll take data on behavior and I try to create protocols to create some meaningful change using that data.
Right on. So, like, when you collect that data, what are you observing that you're collecting data on?
For my day job, I specifically work with children with autism, so everyone's allowed to be bothered or pissed off. Right. But there are appropriate ways to be pissed off. So, banging your head against the wall or hitting a friend, those are not appropriate ways. They'll get you in trouble a little later on in life. So recording those behaviors, checking out the frequency, seeing what are triggers, some of the antecedent stuff that happens before, how are we responding to that? Are we reinforcing that by responding a certain way? So
specifically with those people, you're able to analyze it in a way that you can affect change. It's not just saying that's just how they are.
Exactly.
It's actually looking at the brain function for those types of people who have a certain type of way of thinking, and then analyzing and be able to enforce that change. Okay.
Yep. So 5 kids can push a friend, and they probably all have different reasons on why they're pushing their friend. And finding out what the reason is, how we're responding to that change, how we can manipulate the environment to set them up for success, to learn new changed behavior so they're more socially significant and ultimately lead to independence.
Right on. And how does that, which is very interesting in understanding those thought patterns, how does that connect you to novel? How did you get to that one?
As we'll talk about a little later today, psilocybin is an extraordinary thing. And I think with offering systematic ways and protocols to offer that in a therapeutic fashion, I think people are seeing what this is about. I think it's extraordinary what can happen, some of the changes that can take place.
All right, Tess, well, let's get back to you. How did we arrive at this situation? All of a sudden, mushrooms are everywhere. I got mushroom coffee. I got mushroom meat. I got mushroom burgers. Everybody wants me to eat mushrooms. But, so how did we get here?
Well, we've been here for the past 18,000 years, I guess. Mushrooms are nothing new to our ancestors, our, human species. We've had a relationship with mushrooms since almost the beginning of our time, I'd say. Mushrooms precede us, pretty much are the reason why we are even here. Having been one of the first organisms here on Earth, breaking down that bedrock, creating soil, thus creating terrestrial life to actually occur on planet Earth is really kind of...
It's like the first animal of the animal kingdom.
They're our ancestors.
Right. It's so weird because you watch enough documentaries like I do, and I got into it, and I didn't really understand until I went down to a little bit of a deep dive with fungi, and I'm like, oh my God, the mushrooms have literally, like you said, broken down everything to create the substrate for everything else to grow. It was the launching point for all other living life to be on land, because it basically created land from rocks.
Sure. Yep.
And then that allowed plants.
Soil.
Plants allowed for animals, insects, and then everything came out of it. So it's almost like mushrooms don't get their own kingdom as much as they should.
And they didn't even, they were part of the plant kingdom until about the 70s. And then, they realized how different
After
they
the
were.
60s, they're like, no, this is different.
Yeah, after the taxonomists, broke them off into their own kingdom. And actually now scientists have put fungi and animalia into one kingdom. That is because our genetic makeup is so similar to fungi. So
it's certainly closer to fungi than fungi is to plants.
Yes. I like that you brought that up because that's interesting how taxonomy, takes place. And
absolutely.
And it shows that ancestral relationship, when you break it down that way. So, yeah, we have had a relationship with fungi for a very long time. There has been a disconnect. We see a lot of mycophobia, a lot of stigma around fungi. My goal with, the community was to just talk about mushrooms. 10 years ago, people were just still had that stigma, misinformed. The war on drugs created a lot of
certainly
phobia.
Politics gets in the way of
Absolutely.
Yeah, our traditions get in the way of progress. Pick an industry. Tradition always gets in the way of progress, for sure.
Right. So my idea was to just talk about mushrooms, get people interested. Hey, did you know that penicillin is a fungus? Did you know that, antibiotics were, and
we think more of mold in our house.
Right.
We think dirty. We think gross.
And I think, hey, that's an indicator species. It's letting you know there's a leak somewhere.
Right.
To kind of just get people to think in a different way when it comes to fungi and mushrooms. So
you're not just a big psilocybin fan. You're you love fungi.
I do. I love them so much. They're
you love it as a food. You love it as a medicine. You love that some of it's dangerous.
Absolutely. Give it all to me. Bring it on.
Well, let's go down a very specific road of mushrooms and walk down the psilocybin road. We get it. You could probably Google mushroom health on everything else. There's mushrooms in everything. But right now, let's get into the psilocybin use for mental and behavioral health. Walk us down the road of how we got to the point where it's research.
Psilocybin is in the limelight, right? It's popular. And how do things get popular? People are talking, word of mouth, people are talking about it. Something's working, so...
It's that whole tell a friend. If it works, you tell people, right? I tried this great thing. Right, yeah.
And tell John Hopkins and get them on, so they really were the pioneers in doing the data-driven science, backing this chemical compound with data-driven science and research. When we talk about psilocybin, I think why it was so accepted at the university research level is the fact that it is so similar to serotonin, something that occurs naturally in our brains. And looking at the chemical structure of psilocybin and recognizing, hey, when we ingest this, when our body dephosphorylates it and turns it into psilocin, that psilocin molecular structure mimics serotonin so well that it can attach to receptors in our brain. So why does this mushroom contain this chemical compound that attaches to our 5-HT2A serotonin receptor? I mean, this is a very ancient receptor. It's been around since single-celled organisms. So there is this connect, and I think it's so special, but also it's really interesting to scientists.
It being so similar to serotonin, what's it doing? Is it only activating that, or is there a cascade of other things going on?
We have many serotonin receptors in our brain. Psilocybin is the prodrug of psilocin. So when we ingest psilocybin, it breaks down into psilocin. It then can cross the blood-brain barrier and pharmacologically be available to our receptors. But it's the 2A receptors that make it a little bit different than just regular serotonin. And these are the receptors that are located in the exterior cortex of our brain, the prefrontal cortex. That has to do with speech and behavior and decision making, and then our visual cortex, and that's sometimes why you get that visuals or hallucinations if you take enough psilocybin. So it's not exactly going to work in the brain like serotonin, but
the key fits.
Sure.
It's more like the key in that receptor goes in there, but it's not just serotonin. It happens to fit in that receptor. That's just how it plugs in.
And serotonin is responsible for so many things, not just mood. Sleep patterns are...
socially, when we know, we're done with a conversation, serotonin is responsible for that. Serotonin is responsible for a ton. what's really cool about psilocybin, opposed to like SSRIs in the past that have been proven to work with depression or OCD or any times SSRIs are taken, is SSRIs are usually just sprinkling and it's kind of non-selective. And with psilocybin, it's a lot more selective. And that's why when we were talking about Johns Hopkins earlier, Johns Hopkins did a really good job showing us that it's a far better performing alternative than SSRIs.
Under what conditions? Obviously, some people are prescribed SSRIs, and then there's all sorts of different...
And they have their place.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, yeah. But then there's also a spectrum, a whole bunch of different SSRIs that all act slightly different depending on, and you got to find the right one for you. And those all have their own application for certain people. What's the application for this treatment? Is this something I take every day like an SSRI? Like if you take Zoloft every day, do I just pop my psilocybin every day? Or is this a hardcore treatment?
So there's two schools of thought for this, and Tess can speak a little bit about that. I could talk to you a little more about what Johns Hopkins kind of showed. It's been around for a while. It's 2 equally spaced doses, higher doses, and they're guided. A therapeutic guide will walk you through. So there's different components to it. So there's like a setting, and then there's the post-integration part. And those are like the basic, for time's sake purposes, the components of the therapy side of mushrooms. So you're taking a higher dose. We kind of calculate that based off of like weight and metabolism and all that good stuff. Johns Hopkins was able to prove that one higher dose can be therapeutic and have long-lasting adaptive effects after that one time. And you don't have to take, like, this is something you never have to take again.
This is like going in for an inpatient treatment.
Yep.
Or
exactly.
an outpatient treatment, I should
exactly.
say. So this isn't like walking in, give me my shot, and then I go out, right? This is, you're probably preparing.
There's a preparation. There's things that will rule you out. So if you have any type of psychosis, if you have a first cousin with psychosis, you probably want to rule that person out. If someone's taking SSRIs, you don't want to be competing for receptors. There are different factors that lead up to a health workup, a psychological workup. We just want to make sure you're clear and you're a good candidate for something like this. And then after, we get through all of that part, then we try to get your set. So if you hear set and setting in a psilocybin space, that's kind of what we're referring to. So set is your mindset. What are you coming in for?
Right. What are your intentions?
Yeah, what are your intentions? Yes. And it shouldn't be too broad. It's like, what do you want to work towards? What do you want to get out of this?
And by this point, I'm guessing you've even just walked there and said, I don't feel good. You've addressed a number of things where objectively you probably have a list going of the things that are affecting you, because this isn't a type of treatment you take lightly and you just go do under these circumstances, right? Exactly. I know a lot of people want to have their experiences, and that's great. But like when you're actually looking at this from a therapeutic setting, there's a lot of work to be done before, during, and even after, I'm sure.
Oh, and the setting aspect is
And you're sorry to interrupt, but you're speaking, when you say we, you're speaking for the industry.
Yes,
this is what you're going to see at this isn't just novel, but this seems to be, based on the hundreds of documentaries I've watched on everything, this seems to be like, then they bring you in, they do the thing, right? Please continue.
So we as a facilitated therapists who are in this space are really putting an emphasis on setting. Like that's when we say setting. Okay, so just step back for a second. Psilocybin is Scheduled 1 drug in most places. So for sure there's the geopolitical factors that played into that, but there are people who took other psychedelics, LSD, and stared at the sun and become blind. So there are red tape for a reason. Right. And when we think about a setting, we want to make sure the person who's facilitating this journey is not on psychedelics. They're not on psilocybin. Right. They are removing any triggers. So if you talked about, what you're coming in for, it could be like domestic abuse, anything that could, have someone have a trigger in that room that could lead to...
You got all the context to understand, and you're producing the best setting for that person to have that. So you're basically removing all possibility of distraction.
Yes. And that's why the data shows closing your eyes during this. So eye shades makes this a much better experience, because you don't want to be dealing with seeing the visual distortions or the fracture in reality. You want to be able to have that eye cover, kind of focus on that. The music has to be specific.
Going inward.
Yes.
Versus being distracted by so many things out.
Right, which stops people from meditating so much. Because they're like, I'm thinking about this. Like, that's what we're talking about, the distraction of that.
Yeah, and the ability to choose like a playlist. Johns Hopkins is a really cool playlist that, different sounds and percussions can affect it. And then so there's the 30 to 45 minutes, You're waiting for the effects to kick in.
When you say this is an oral medication, it's an injection?
It's ingested orally. So when they were doing clinical trials, they were using, it was, I think, intravenously administered. But for most like therapy sessions like this, it's just a capsule that you're taking, a predetermined.
It's why it's not just how many caps and stems are on there.
Yes,
no, it's
exactly.
Like dried.
Yep.
It's farm grade. Yeah.
Yes. And with that, the eye shades, the music, making sure that you're not, they don't have ability to jump out of a window or walk into traffic, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, you could even remove
Proper
the
hydration.
ridiculousness of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So job of the facilitator is not to like try to have them, connect dots that don't exist. It's just to make sure they're safe, to facilitate this and to,
They're not the therapist.
Exactly.
They're the experienced facilitator, right?
Exactly. And then there's the post-integration. You leave with some insights and you try to...
And does that person provide those insights back on what they're like reflecting back on what they saw? So it's more like pointing back out so that you could reflect back inward on what happened.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, so talk to me about the application of the WHO. So is this a therapy for people that have only experienced some high-grade traumas, or is this, like anything else, can be used for people with all sorts of different things?
Depression, substance abuse. The FDA did a thing with this type of therapy with war veterans. It showed some big promise with PTSD. So there's a wide range of things that psilocybin can target.
Those are pretty intense things. Like when you say depression, you're not just saying sad. You're saying a therapist diagnosed you with
clinically
depression.
diagnosed depression. Just to remind people that psilocybin is not doing any of this work. Psilocybin is just the catalyst. It is a tool. And our tagline at Novel is...
Magic is you.
The magic is you. Exactly. So there's a lot of work that you need to put in to have any type of adaptable therapeutic long-term effects.
It's just what you're saying is don't look at the mushroom like as the power.
Yep.
No, you still got to paddle the boat, dude.
Yep.
Here's a raft. It's called psilocybin. It'll help you, but you got to paddle.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
Okay, so
Upstream
that makes way more
sometimes.
Right, and that's
that's
if it was easy, we wouldn't need it. A lot of the times it seems that when people reach out for these types of therapies, and into the terms that even the Johns Hopkins was studying, they're people that are struggling to even talk about these things that are triggers or whatever. These aren't just, I'm a little angsty. I think I need to go do this experience. No, we're talking about people that struggle to address the problems that are preventing them from having a balanced life.
Yeah, and it's really cool because the psilocybin is actually helping dissociate some of those triggers from what normally would be a trigger. So those triggers still exist. You don't look at them different. You're just dissociating from those triggers.
That's what I learned in EMDR therapy. We had you guys familiar with that? So eye movement desensitization and reprogramming basically allows you to access both sides of your brain with a therapist, and they essentially are able to help you walk you through a set of things that allow you to look at a situation that triggers you very much, but then to be able to handle it. You're not saying we can remove you from feeling bad about something. We're saying that you can use things that allow you to address things that don't shut down your whole day.
Exactly.
Or week or what. People don't get out of bed sometimes from these triggers. So, and if you've ever seen it, it's pretty bad. So it's nice to know that people like you have these organizations that are starting to pop up that are looking to teach people that this is just a tool. This is not the cure.
Yes, absolutely. I would say that to not take away from people's journeys that, take some psilocybin and go to the woods and have
Right.
I'm not going to say don't do it or do it, but I'll say that doing it in a therapeutic setting like I just suggested or talked about is a different application. So
yeah, the types of human beings that are looking for this under your application are literally looking to heal something to make a positive impact. And there's nothing wrong with going out to the woods. And if that's your thing and you're doing,
some of the most creative things have happened in those situations.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not here to judge. You do you, human.
That's right.
Okay, so people that go through these therapies, what should they expect after? You're saying that they're done after, they feel better, or are they continuing therapies and just kind of readdressing these?
Yeah, so there's still work to be done for sure. It's honestly just small measurable changes. It's reevaluating your relationship with a lot of things. And I think that these experiences do help you reevaluate. It's considered a trigger or reevaluate what's contributing to some of the things that you're feeling. But the science does show that neurogenesis is taking place. Different regions of your brain that are not normally communicating are communicating. there is, in a sense, brain growth and development that's happening as an adult that usually doesn't happen as an adult.
To be determined on some of that.
Yeah.
It's interesting, positive stuff. Nothing we're seeing where people are getting negative superpowers.
Yeah, people are reporting. People are reporting back like good stuff, but for sure, I think that there still needs to be some follow up with some of these participants or wherever that is being done, where it's legal to follow up and see how they're feeling a year or 2 years or 3 years after some of these experiences.
Follow up is important, and I think especially when people are undergoing a higher dose, they're feeling something they've never felt before. An interconnectedness, a oneness. Some people report it as being the most significant experience they've ever had in their life. So how do you integrate that back into reality? Once you are, and this could be an issue sometimes with people that, you have an ego dissolution, but then you feel superior because you went through this whole spiritual journey. Sometimes
you've seen the thing they talk. Oh, I know. It's I have the information.
So people can actually get an heightened ego from
they're just,
these.
Do you think they're just trading their ego? Or they think they dissolved it, but they just kind of hit it over here? Yeah, there might be some issues with that person.
It's important to remain humble and to really reevaluate this feeling of oneness and interconnectedness to everything. And it can be very powerful. And this is so important for, collective consciousness. If a lot of people are going through this experience, they're feeling self-love, love for other people, they're reconnecting with nature, something that a lot of people have lost touch with. It can really help us as a human species to evolve.
It's an incredible experience going through it, but the therapeutic effects are felt weeks after, sometimes, months after for certain people. So it's an experience you can feel in the moment, but then the actual changes like she's discussing happens a few weeks after. They're lasting effects.
And those lasting effects is maybe more the ability to not let things bother you as much, to see things, like you said, more interconnected to everything. Mm-hmm. To be less selfish is, I think, in a lot of ways, to be in less pain. Because if it's not all about you, you can't be disappointed all the time.
Right.
I'm not disappointed. I'm not in pain. I'm just kind of like, oh, that's cool.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not about
Go
me.
with the flow,
if I don't make it about me, I'm not disappointed that I'm not top dog in everything or whatever, or I think being a parent's part of that too.
Oh yeah, that helps.
It helps understand that, but then you realize they're going to get to experience all these things too. And yeah. All right. Well, cool. Tell us more about where people can learn more about Novel and more about psilocybin.
Absolutely. I think it's a good time to bring up the journal, and that's a big part of Novel, and we're really proud of it. It's in print right now, so I'll let Sam talk about the journal a little bit.
So earlier we discussed getting the setting, prepping for these sessions. We know that this type of therapy is very expensive. It's not accessible to everyone. With the most cutting edge modern medicine, it's just most people don't get access to it. And with Novel being a passion project, we really wanted to make sure that this knowledge was accessible to a lot of people. So for the last year, myself, Tess, and a few other people on the team have been working on a journal that's in production now. It's a self-guided therapeutic journal. So so you can go through one of these experiences without shelling out a few $1,000s for which I don't think should replace seeing a facilitated therapist, but does supplement that. It can offer an alternative to that. So we're really excited about this journal.
Where can they get a hold of it?
Our website. So it'll be on our website in the next month or so. It's in print right now. So our website is www.novel-health.com.
Awesome.
And it will be available on the site and a few other places locally.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming in today.
Thanks for having
me.
us.
And I wish you luck.
So much fun.
Maybe we'll turn this into a therapy office.
Hey, we could.
Just lay on the table.
Thank you for joining us in the Minds on the Frontline podcast. We hope everyone enjoyed this episode. We have more great content coming out soon. Please check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. It really helps us out. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.